Hey everybody, Stephen Bogran here, and today I'm talking about low carbohydrate diets and fat loss.
My name is Steven, and this is our video about health and fitness things that I work for Steve, and I am just a guy with a fitness thing for you.
Hey y'all, hope everyone's having a great day. That's the normal way I start this off, right? It's been a little bit. Today we're talking about low carb diet and fat loss because so many of us have been told over the years that carbohydrates might be the devil, much as Ricky Bobby's mother might feel about football, so to speak. And that those maybe are the reason that we cannot lose body fat and that we must utilize a lower carbohydrate approach for fat loss. Now, before I get into it, let's just go ahead and say this is not true. There are many ways that we can get to fat loss. The truth of the matter is what we have to do is create a calorie deficit, and we can do that in multiple ways. If you are thinking, oh, I have to cut carbs, you don't. You can cut total calories, and we'll get into that a little bit later. One of the things that we really get in this habit of thinking is that because carbs have this facilitation of insulin response, we think that this is going to create only fat storage. And the truth of the matter is that with a calorie deficit happening, meaning we are burning more calories than we are intaking throughout the day, there simply is not extra storage to store. And so even if insulin is shuttling nutrients and such into the muscle, which we would call anabolic or growth based, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not using those for building muscle and repairing muscle. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're using them for storing body fat. It just simply means that that is its job. It's taking that and putting it into the muscle or to the cell. Insulin is not this like big scary bad guy for people who are healthy. Normal changes in insulin are that, in fact, normal. We don't want to get to this point where we are afraid of insulin or afraid of carbohydrates because of insulin. There are a lot of different things that can get in our head and can get confusing, like glycemic load, glycemic index, fiber content, but we can of course keep it more simplistic to make it easily digestible for pretty much anybody. Have enough fruits, have enough veggies, make sure that we get enough of those typically healthy food options that we know are going to be good for us. And yes, we can probably still have some of the fun stuff, some of the more calorie dense things. We can have a cookie here and there. We can have a piece of cake. Yes, pizza, which by the way, pizza normally is going to have more calories coming from fats than carbs depending on what you do. Fun fact. But we can still enjoy those things in moderation and still make progress. Obviously, some of us have an easier time getting into a diet in a deficit to lose body fat than others, and that's going to make an impact on what you can and can't get away with. We can still do so with some carbohydrates, and there may be some evidence that low carbohydrates may in fact make it more difficult. Now that could be because of pyruvate and how we see that that runs into fat oxidation and the Krebs cycle. It could be through some other measures in terms of how it might affect thyroid hormone. That being said, again, I think it's a little bit too complex to get into that. The big thing that we should look at is we want to have a healthy mixed diet. Yes, we want to have more than enough protein. We want to make sure we're getting protein for keeping muscle. Yes, we want to have carbs for the same reason and for fueling our activity. And yes, we want to have fats for fueling activity and fat-soluble vitamins and healthy things. So the trick of fat loss is not necessarily low carb, and it's not necessarily low fat. The trick of fat loss, the magic pill, so to speak, is we simply have to be in this place where our body is using more energy than it's taking in, what we call a calorie deficit. And yes, we absolutely can do that with a lower carbohydrate approach, and some people, maybe that's your preference and that works well for you. Great. If that works well for you, do it. If that helps keep us from going off the rails after the fact, great, let's do it. There is nothing wrong with a low carbohydrate approach. We simply want to understand that yes, there are other ways that we can do it, and depending on who we are, our preferences, there may be other ways that are better for us to do it. Because the big thing we want to be aware of with these low carbohydrate approaches, and sometimes very low calorie approaches, is that when we restrict and when we keep ourselves from having things for such a long amount of time, what often happens is we go back the other way. We almost slingshot. And so what ends up happening is then we have that weight regain coming right back. I know the low carbohydrate approaches can be really exciting. Everybody really thinks about keto and losing 10 pounds very quickly. Oftentimes that's mostly water weight. It's not really truly body fat that we're getting rid of in those initial moments, those initial weeks of keto, where we're really seeing that crazy progress. Do we want to lose weight or do we want to lose body fat? And this is a good distinction that we should be making with ourselves when we're looking at those things. So if our goal is to lose body fat, yes, weight matters. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't, but we can delineate the difference between saying weight doesn't necessarily mean body fat. And so understanding we might not need to take a keto approach. It's not going to be realistic for us in the long term. We might not need to go down to 50 carbs. Those things might end up actually being more harm than good for us in what we want to get out of that dieting phase. Especially if your goal is to keep as much muscle as possible, because carbohydrates are part of that. They're literally net protein balance. How much muscle we build, how much muscle we break down. Okay? Carbohydrates help to influence how much muscle we break down and minimize that. If we want to keep the most muscle, we don't want to limit carbs too much. We also don't want to limit fats too much. So when I talked about there's different ways we can do it, yes, we can do it calorie-wise. Normally our goal should be limiting carbohydrate or fat intake, one of the two, in terms of creating a deficit through nutrition. The other way that we can do it is obviously by movement. Right? So that might mean, okay, we're going to start going to the gym. That might mean we're going to add an extra day. We might start doing some more cardio, and we're going to do half an hour of, on the elliptical when we go to the gym on certain days. We might add more step count, right? Okay, my smartwatch that I'm not wearing right now, of course, it's been reading 5,000 steps a day. So I'm going to make sure that I'm getting that number to 7,000, 7,500 a day. Whatever makes sense for us. So now we're burning more calories throughout the day. It's just simply part of that, am I in a surplus, am I in a deficit, creating that calorie deficit so that we are burning more than we're bringing in. And we should be seeing that weight is going down. That is how we're going to lose weight. So whether that be low carbohydrate diet, moderate carbohydrate diet, lower or moderate fat diets, it doesn't necessarily matter which way you go about it. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, someone once said. The biggest thing is that we are going about it in a way that is going to be maintainable for us in the long term. So making sure that we're not trying to change everything overnight, because we're most certainly going to see that that's going to kick us back. And we are most certainly going to see that that's going to be difficult to uphold after we've reached said goal weight or whatever we might be searching for. Making sure that we are keeping enough healthy, nutrient-dense foods in, and making sure that we are doing it in a way that is not going to put us at risk for having issues down the road. So I'm going to keep it shorter and sweeter this week. I hope that helps. Can low carbohydrate diets work for fat loss? Yes, absolutely they can. Are they necessary for fat loss? Absolutely not. There are plenty of ways that we can still achieve our fat loss and body composition goals without resorting to a specific low carbohydrate diet.